Hey guys, I'm so excited to come on and let you know that I have created a free journal template for you. Badasses build boundaries. Boundaries have been essential to me in my healing journey, and I know they can do the same for you. It's when we say no to the things that don't serve us that we're really able to be true to who we authentically are and who we are looking to become. So go into the show notes or go to my website, jessieblois.com, to find the link and download your copy today.
Welcome back to the podcast, you guys. I'm really excited. Today we have Breanne Swenson here, and Breanne is a intuitive energy guide. So this is right up my alley, and I have so many questions, and I just can't wait to hear everything she has to share with us. Thanks so much for being here, Breanne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so
I'm
excited.
so excited you're here. So, Breanne is the owner of A Breezy Journey. It's a wellness lifestyle brand that provides well-rounded wellness through the modalities of sound and Reiki energy healing, home and office energy cleansing, a variety of wellness experiences for groups and individuals. She has a background in interior design, so she combines this with passions and studies of holistic healing to help raise the vibration of her clients. She's also the co-owner of Soul Element Retreats, offering annual women's wellness retreats in Zion National Park. And she's been doing this and changing women's lives since 2017. And she's also a wife and a mom to a little 2-year-old. Those are the most important roles. But I'm thrilled to have you here. We have so much to talk about. Tell me, let's start, Breanne, with your background. Let's start with what your childhood was like and kind of what makes you you and what brought you to this point today.
Okay, go taking it way back.
Yeah,
So,
taking it way back. I think our childhood has so much to do with who we are,
yeah,
right?
definitely. So, it's interesting. And so I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in a Mormon household. So my family is Mormon. So I did grow up in a very spiritual family. Our lives were very oriented around church and community within the church, and um, which is beautiful. Like, I love having that foundation in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer consider myself, I'm not a practicing Mormon. I've gone through a lot of transitions, a lot of changes, and just coming into my own understandings of organized religion, of spirituality, of all the things. And so I've kind of paved my own path in that. And in my family, I'm a little bit of a black sheep in that retrospect. But it's been quite a journey to, I think, gain the respect of my parents and of my family members in who I am and who I've become outside of being part of the Mormon church. So,
Yeah, I can imagine. So I have questions for you about this because I know when you break a pattern of your families, a lot of times you're viewed as you said, the black sheep or wrong or the problem starter. I don't know, is this how your family reacted? Did they support you or did they get upset with you? And how did you navigate their reactions and hold that boundary and stick to honoring yourself?
I mean, that's been quite a journey. And to be honest, I mean, I'm still navigating it. I think it's never ending. And it has been quite the journey. And I'll say, it's like when I left high school, like I said, I went to my whole family. I grew up in Southern California. I went away to college in Alabama. So I had a full ride scholarship for volleyball, took me across the country. And when I was looking at colleges, in my heart, I was like, I want to get almost like as far away from my family and my upbringing. I wanted to experience something new and different, a whole different culture. But mainly I felt like, and I realize it now, but I don't think I realized it in the time, right? That I wanted to break away. And in that, though, I took very extreme measures in saying, okay, I'm not going to be held down by how I'm supposed to live and what I'm supposed to do within all these religious constructs. And I went into very unhealthy habits. I mean, I was drinking a ton. I was very promiscuous. I experimented with drugs. I just went like from one extreme to the far other, right? And that was hard. And I can imagine now as a mom and a parent, seeing your child going through that and struggling is heartbreaking. And so I feel a lot of, you know, I've worked through a lot of guilt in putting my parents through that. But there was also a point in time where I was coming out of that, and we can get into kind of how that transition came about. But as I came into that and finding myself having to literally have a conversation with my father, I'll never forget, in saying, Dad, like, I'm not a bad person. So, like, just because I'm not Mormon, just because I don't go to church every Sunday, doesn't make me a bad person, right? Like, I was doing a lot of harmful things for myself, but I had never been to jail. Like, I wasn't doing like committing major crimes. You know, I was still rooted in who I was. And it's been a long process to, I feel like, have that full breakthrough. And like I said, it continues. It's like a never ending thing. And even with, like, I don't have a very strong relationship. I have two older brothers. I don't really have much of a relationship with either of them. My one of my brothers, like, I think that they're a little hesitant in having me around too much as influences for their children, because they, and respectably so, like, they want their kids to believe and know that like the church is the way we live. And here I am doing my thing, being successful and prosperous and positive and for the world, and making really beautiful changes in people's lives in a completely different way. And it's sad because it's a little closed, a little sheltered. And it breaks my heart that I don't have that relationship with my nieces and nephews and my brother. And
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because when I started sending boundaries in my family, boundaries for different reasons, but saying that something that's happening in my family and that's happened for generations, I don't want to carry that on for my immediate family and my children's lives. And I felt strong in the boundary, but it caused a lot of separation, and then it feels lonely, and then it's like, well, shoot, like that's my family. And if I'm gonna put up that boundary, I can't just, get in. You can meet new friends, right? But
right.
you can't just go get that family that you were born into. So there's a lot of pain that
There
comes with
is.
it. So how did you navigate through that pain and then find the ability to own it, either, to accept actually that you're not going to have that relationship with your brother and your nieces and your nephews? Or is that something that's just, it is really painful and there is no good way to accept it?
I think that's what it is. Honestly, I think that it always is painful. I just have to continually remember that I am embracing and stepping into my own power, and I'm okay with that, and maybe down the future in the long run, I see like things hopefully will change. And I don't think it's good, because I can also say it within, like, I don't think there's any ill will towards each other, right? I think it's just a little bit just of a separation of beliefs, and that's okay, and lifestyle. And so I think that's it. And so I honor them and the space that they hold for their family and how they want to do things. And then I honor the space that I have for myself and my family. And it's been beautiful, because even in my own relationship with my mother, as I continue to offer and grow and offer these different modalities, I've seen her a little bit break down some of her barriers and saying, like, oh, well, like, gosh, so many things you talk about with energy and with our vibrations and what we put out and what we receive is so accurate. And that's what I think is so beautiful. And what I love to get across too is that these healing modalities, they're not specific to a specific religion,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, you can be any religion you want other than atheist, because
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I'm like, we all call it different things, but we're all after the same feeling, end goal, ability to work with community and those around us. It's just maybe approached differently or call different things, but we're all searching for the same inner peace
Mhm.
and wholeness.
Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty in it. And so that's what I hold on to, is
Yeah.
exactly that, as long as somebody and anybody is striving to have a connection to source or God or universe or whatever, it's called or labeled, then let's bring in these different aspects and see how it's all connected.
Yes. Wouldn't the world be a different place if we were all trying to find our commonalities?
I mean,
I know.
like where are we at, everybody? But it's beautiful because I will say, like, so in the last 10 years, it's been like about 11 years now that I feel like I've really dived into my awakening, into holistic healing and things like that. And it wasn't so mainstream, right? It like the wellness talk and community of connection and just different modalities has really, while it's an ancient wisdom, I mean, it's really taking off. And so that's why I'm excited. I mean, with you and the podcast, I mean, this is why we're here, right? To spread this good word and to keep building awareness for people and allowing and creating a platform for people to dive in a little deeper and whatever that looks like for them. And that's the other thing. We have to think, yes, we're all connected, but all of our journeys are so different.
Right. And finding these modalities, and I mean, I haven't even explored as many as you offer and do, and I'm so excited to learn more, but they saved me because I was doing the same stuff over and over and over, the therapy, the medication, the this, the that, and I wasn't feeling better until I found this for me. But I think just coming I want to add, like, coming back to your brother, so you and your parents, you're a little bit better, that relationship's been mended. For your brothers, was it that it wasn't any like labeled religion, or is what you're doing a little too like woo woo for them to understand? Is that
Yeah, I think
okay?
so, and like I said, I mean, because I went through such a dark phase, I think that, and maybe that image of who I was has like maybe stuck more than who I am today.
Got it.
And so I just keep showing up. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna keep showing up.
I mean, I think that's the name of this episode. We always name the episode after the fact, and keep showing up, because that's really what it's all about. We're okay, or we will be okay if we keep showing up. It's when you give up that, it's done.
Yeah, and so, it's interesting because when you're talking about, your journey and like the different things that you've tried and all of this stuff. So it's like, so I went into this dark phase of my life, mainly through college, a little bit after college. And then it like I was doing all the things like you said. I ended up super depressed. So I battle depression, I battle anxiety. It runs in my family with a family history of like attempted suicide. And so that is something that like I struggle with. And so I was tried multiple different kinds of medications, and then I self-medicated, right? And all of those things. And finally it was just like, man, I was at work one day and showing up to work like hungover and tired and doing all these things, but talking about how I wanted to be healthy and I wanted to run marathons and I like was eating healthy and I was doing all these healthy things, but like mentally I hadn't gotten there yet. And so I was still doing all of the self-medications. And so one of my coworkers ends up saying to me, Breanne, you keep talking about all these healthy lifestyle things that you want to be a part of and you want to do, but then you continually show up hungover and like out partying and doing all of these terrible things. So she's like, I want you to come to yoga. And again, like yoga is so like big and mainstream now, right? But 10, 12 years ago, this was actually, my gosh, 15, probably like 2009. How many years ago is that? A lot, right?
I don't know. Don't make me do math.
So 2009, she says, like, I think you should come to yoga with me because and then so as an athlete, thinking like, okay, like a physical practice, another form of exercise, like, let me go to this yoga class. So I went to this yoga class and I'll never forget it. And the teacher at the end guided us through this really beautiful, deep meditation. And I had this like out of body experience. It took me to a level that like at that time only like drugs had ever taken me to. And I walked away from that and was like, whoa, that was amazing. I'm never going back.
I love that. I'm envious. I'm waiting for my like whoa moment where something just completely feels different and shifts. When you talk about,
But let me say, like, so
yeah.
I walked away and said, I'm never going back. I can't do that. That's too powerful. That's too strong. I'm not there yet.
Oh, you're never going back to yoga.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant like I'm never going back to my old ways.
No.
Oh, oh, it scared you.
It scared me. It scared me. Like I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to show up for myself yet, right? Like I had been invited and introduced, but I didn't know what I was getting into. And I wasn't ready to take that step. And so I didn't go to another yoga class for probably 4 years. I had another 4 years of very tumultuous experiences and life and just kept digging myself deeper and deeper and deeper. And then finally I hit rock bottom. I was 27 and I hit rock bottom. And I literally was like, I wanted to take my life. And I remember one of my friends reached out and said, hey, I have a friend. He's getting his yoga teacher training. He's offering free classes in his pool house in Thousand Oaks. Like, do you want to come with me one day? And so I was like, you know what? Yes. Like, I remember that yoga class 4 years ago. It blew my mind. I wasn't ready, but like, I have nothing left to give and nothing left to try. I will show up. And that was that was my moment. Those classes, I ended up going like once a week for 6 months solid, and I dove in and I broke down walls, and I thought, and those were my aha moments. So that's where it's like, okay, yes, we want to keep showing up, but also like you can't show up where you're not ready to. And so
absolutely. And I also hit rock bottom, my own rock bottom, and that's what made me really look to start doing the work. But I mean, it's sad that we have to get to a rock bottom to do that, but it's really when you look back, you're grateful for it because it puts you in a different direction. I want to ask though, really quickly going backwards, when you talk about your dark time in college and you're finally, away from your family and making your own decisions, do you feel like that would have happened no matter what? Just it's who you are, or do you feel like, and I ask this as a mom, um, when we're told what to do as children and we're not really able to make our own choices, it's like then we're let free and we rebel and we don't know how to manage ourselves, our emotions, what's enough, what's too much, that extreme. Do you think it was just breaking out of the nest and you just, didn't have an internal guide, or do you think it's something that you would have experienced regardless?
that's a good question. I think that maybe a combination of the two. I think maybe I wouldn't have gone as extreme. But here's the thing is like I wasn't partying in high school, right? So where kids were like drinking and partying in high school and kind of maybe getting it out of their system, I didn't have that. And so then when you're thrown into a college environment and you're completely immersed, especially a athlete in college, like I don't think it's talked about enough for how toxic it is being an athlete in college. It's basically like a sorority or fraternity system, but as athletes.
But with pressure.
But with the pressure of performing, right? Every day. And so that is part of it. I think also like I hadn't really developed my full sense of self-worth yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, I don't want to talk negatively about anything or any organization that does a lot of good in the world, but to me, from what I've learned is really, our modern day religion is stemmed from suppression of women specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in this patriarchal society that's been generated from, centuries ago of women not being allowed to hold leadership positions in a church, right? Of women being told that we don't hold the same power that men hold and that we are subordinates to them. And so I think that really resonated. And then having two older brothers and like that concept of like you can't do what the boys can do, or you can't perform the same jobs, basically saying like you're not powerful enough, you're not strong enough. And so through this journey, and this is why I kind of, well, my wellness modalities are for anybody and everybody. I really stem my focus is on women because I want to see, as I have come into my own power and understanding and learning that we as women actually have power that is far stronger than most
Absolutely.
are tuned into.
I can relate to what you're saying so much, not from the religion standpoint. I'm Jewish, but I wasn't raised religious. It's more, our culture. So I didn't grow up at really an organized religion, but I'm a business owner. And I was never a feminist. Like, you want to make all the money, let me stay home and take care of me, like sign me up. But when I became a business owner, I became so pro women because of the crazy shit that still exists. My husband had a boss and I was growing my business. And in my business, like, if you're not face to face with that client, you're not going to generate an income. You have to show up, you have to build a name for yourself. And Ben had sick days and he took a sick day. One of our kids was sick. And his boss said to him, "Why do you stay home when your child is sick? Jesse will never be able to accomplish what you can if you just focus on your career." And I'll never forget it. And Ben came home and kind of like relayed the message because it's actually his boss was my dad's estranged cousin. So it was like blood.
Yeah.
And I just thought, holy shit, this is still the way people are thinking. Watch me. And then like we worked with business coaches that were men and they would be like, "Oh, you're so hard on Ben or Jesse." Ben, and I was like, "Oh my God. Like you don't want to honor my intuition. You don't want to honor my emotion. I'm telling you something's wrong. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but if we do a deep dive, there's something wrong with this department of the company." And they would just be like, "Do it, like do what I say." And guess what? I was never wrong. But women, and then here's the thing, if you're a working woman, you're also a stay-at-home mom, not in the fact that you're there all day, but you still have the same responsibilities. You're still managing your whole family's calendar, and it's not honored, it's not talked about. It's just silently the norm. So I, started experiencing all of this and I was like, "Oh, women are badass and really need support and really need to support each other." I mean, don't even get me started on that. And just be like held and seen and told, like, "Good job. You're really doing an amazing job." But yeah, I mean, I've never thought I'd be so pro women, but I am.
And I think there's a healthy balance, right? Because
Mhm.
um it's about, honoring the masculinity and their roles, and then honoring our femininity, and then hopefully finding a little bit of that in everybody, right? And
Well, I was gonna
so,
say, hopefully we have a masculine side such as
right,
well. But I
right,
feel like when you're trying to prove yourself as a woman, you have to pour so much into your masculine energy that it takes away from us being able to honor our feminine energy. And it's really nice when you're able to find the balance between the two, because I think there's a really big importance to the masculine and the feminine, and it's beautiful when they, can coexist.
absolutely. And so if you think too, like, so I'm just started this book called Wolfpack by Abby Womack, and she's
Mm-hmm.
the national team. Okay?
Yeah.
And she talks about how she got this speaking engagement, and the person said to her, "Hey, I want you to come speak at my company, but I want to make sure, like, I know you're a feminist, and I want to make sure that the messages that you put across are actually applicable to men as well." And she said, "Okay, well, so all the men speakers that you have come in and speak to your company, do you make sure and ask them that their messages can relate to women as well?" No, no one's ever asking that, right? So it's like, here's women, we have consistently been either silenced or shaped or defined, conditioned to walk on our tiptoes, and it's like, be proper and look the right way and say the right things so that you don't ruffle the men's feathers, right? And it's like, I'm at the point where I'm like, F that, right? Like, let's ruffle some feathers, ladies, because this world is not going to change until we embrace our own power, we embrace each other's power, and we come together and make the shift happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because men have been trying to rule the world now for, again, centuries, and look where it's gotten us.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But I mean, you're right. And I also think, like what you're saying, like it would be really amazing because if we could all work together, and I think that happens, right? Like, I think there's beauty to that. I mean, my husband and I, we own our business together. And I think it's actually a really beautiful partnership because we can hold very different roles, but we can also come together to make decisions when it's needed. I mean, I'm much more emotional in the decision making of the business, and he's much more just straight shooter. It's just a decision that needs to be made, so that balance is nice. But there just needs to be more cohesion in how we're all working together. But the part that gets me is just how much women are still trying to prove themselves. You would think that it's more a thing of the past, but it's not. So yeah, I hear you. I feel you. So let's talk again. So you were doing these yoga classes.
yes.
They really started to change your life. How did you transition or start moving into holistic healing?
Yeah, so I was at that time I was working a corporate interior design job and going to this yoga and just started feeling like, okay, there's more. There's more to this journey. There's more for me. There's more purpose than selling furniture. And I got super into yoga and, ended up starting, like, I think that's Instagram started coming out. And so got into kind of the yoga community through that as well. And I just remember driving to work one day and being so miserable, thinking like, I would almost rather just drive off the side of the road right now than have to go into work and sell furniture to people with no perspective. Like, it's like, okay, why are you cussing me out about your $200 pillow? Like, you can afford a $200 pillow. So, right? So there's just like no perspective. And so at that point, I just said, okay, I need to set myself up to make a shift, to make a change. And obviously we have to have finances. So as much as I hate, like, you have to grind and all this stuff and it's all about work, like, we need the money to live, right?
Yeah.
So I set myself up with like a 6-month plan. I wrote it all out with financially where I was, how I could get myself to I didn't own a house at the time. So like I didn't have a mortgage at least. And so, but I was like, how do I get myself out of credit debt? How do I pay off my car? How do I get no financial obligation essentially so that then I have some freedom to choose what I'm going to do. So I set that path. I didn't know exactly what it looked like. And then within that 6 months, I was introduced to a group, OSO, it's orphanage support. And so they are in Ecuador. So I signed up to quit my job, go to Ecuador for 90 days, as long as you can go without a visa. And I did that. I picked up, I left, I had paid off all my stuff. I moved to Ecuador for 3 months. I lived in a special needs orphanage, and where I helped serve and just get the kids bathed and fed and played with and all of that. And that just took me to the next level. I mean, that right there just took me.
That is so amazing and beautiful. I mean, that's a really big shift from college, what was happening in college.
Yeah.
So it was kind of one extreme to the next. That wasn't like a big eye opener for your family that you're still putting good and beauty into the world.
Yeah, it was. And like, so like
Okay.
my mom has always been a big supporter. Um, I mean, we've gone through it, but that
Hmm.
for her was like huge. And actually I found the organization through her. My mom had actually
Okay.
gone and volunteered at this organization like 5 years before. And so I think through a conversation with my mom and me saying like, Mom, I just can't do this anymore. I can't keep going to work. Like there's got to be something more. And she said, why don't you go and volunteer where I did and go and see and experience? And so that's what I did. And it just knocked my socks off. Um, and then after that, I had an opportunity to have a scholarship to get my yoga teacher training in Peru. And so I was going to go from Ecuador to Peru and do my yoga teacher training. But a few months previous, I met my now husband, and he was like, You're already going to be gone for 3 months. Like, I don't want you to go to Peru. Like, when are you going to come back? And all this stuff. And it was still a very new relationship, but I kind of sacrificed, right? Then I gave up something that I wanted to do, which would have been an amazing experience in Peru. And I came back home to be in my relationship and do that. And to this day, like, I don't know, I still have a little bit of feelings towards that. Like, man, the fact that he even asked me to give up something that was really for me and to better myself, like, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sucks that in that time I still didn't have, like, now if that happened, I would be like, sorry, dude, like, I'm out. I'm taking care of me. I want to, like, we would work it out because he would still be there for me.
Yeah. You were coming home. Was it in that moment you wanted to come back, like you're being validated, like this person's pursuing you and they want you and it's exciting and it's new?
Yeah, right. It feels good. That
Yeah.
that was fulfilling kind of a different part.
Sure.
And so I don't look back and regret it, right? I mean, and the journey has taken me to where I am, and it's been beautiful anyway. And I came home. I took, I think, maybe 6 or 7 months off. I still got my yoga teacher training, just in the state. And I, wasn't sure if I wanted to do the yoga teacher training to actually teach people, or it was mainly for myself, for my own knowledge, for my own understanding. And that took me to a whole new level of our intuition, of harnessing our power, of our connection to self, our connection to source, and the energy vibrations that we put out. And so that, then it did snowball into all of the other modalities that I now offer. So, you can never really look back because it's just about, like we said, showing up in the best way that you know for yourself in that point in time. And that is not linear, it can be different every single day, right? And so that gets into like, okay, practices. I'm going to go on a whole other side tangent now. So, like, when we
Go
get
do
into
it. I'm just like
that
glued listening to you.
about, so when we get into our healing practices. And right now, it is such a mainstream thing of like, you need to meditate, you need to do your yoga, you need to do like all these, natural wellness things that are becoming so much more talked about. Um, but the fact of the matter is that maybe showing up for yourself every day doesn't mean doing 30 minutes of meditation every day, because every day you can't do 30 minutes of meditation. So, like, one day it may just look like walking outside and taking in some fresh air and being present in nature. One day it may be getting on your yoga mat for an hour, or just, reading 10 minutes, an inspirational book before you go to bed. Like, it can look different every day. And I think that's what I've come to learn, is that it just doesn't look linear. Every day is not the same. Every person's journey is not the same. And what we need in each moment is not the same. So that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I used to really put myself on a schedule. Like I must exercise 5 days a week, and they have to be 45 minutes of strength training 3 or 4 days a week. And I have to go on this many walks, and it takes all the joy out of it. And I'm really trying right now to be like, what does my body feel like it can do today? And depending on where women are in their cycles, some weeks you feel really energized and you're like, I can lift heavy. And other weeks you're like, if I have to lift anything, I'm not going to exercise at all.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like really honoring like what can I do today instead of this is what I must do today. Because I'll tell you what, when it's a I must, eventually you can't keep it going. You
and
give
then you
up.
beat yourself up, right? Then you're
Yeah.
you're all of a sudden turning it into a negative thing, like, oh, I didn't do my meditation today. Oh, I didn't work out today.
Right.
Oh, like
Right.
right?
And some days I can do my meditation alone in my room. And some days I do it while I'm walking. And some days I don't do it at all. And then sometimes weeks go by where I don't get to it at all. And sometimes I can listen to a really beautiful, inspirational podcast. And sometimes I just want to laugh and I want to listen to like, a rom-com silly book. It just, whatever feels good in that moment. But it took me a really long time to not be like, this is what I must be doing. And I have to tell you, Breanne, I'm just starting to dip my toe into yoga. And when I say dip, I mean I'm doing like Peloton yoga.
Okay.
It is so hard. I try to get into like the intermediate levels, but then they start like really moving through the flow. And I'm like, I can't keep up. I can't do it. So then I just sit there. So I'm like, okay, Jesse, like swallow your ego, do beginning. But then I'm like, well, this just feels like I'm stretching. It doesn't feel like I'm like trying to figure out like how to learn to really do yoga. But like for anybody out there, it is the best feeling because you're like opening your hips and you're opening your chest. And this releases I mean, for me, like so much trauma and emotion. It feels beautiful, but like it's also very humbling because it's hard. And then you're like, I'm trying to figure out for myself like how to actually do a pose.
Mm-hmm.
So yoga and me, we're just getting to know each other, but I'm liking it. I like crave that I want to be stretching more recently. And I don't know what that means about where I am in my journey, but I feel like I really want to be like opening up my body more.
Well, and so it is, I mean, and that's what is beautiful about yoga is it really is truly about the connection of self and the physical connection. So, knowing the being that you are inside is what you're tapping into. So when you get into a harder flow, holding a pose for longer than you really want to, it's then that you take yourself out of that physical feeling and into the state of being and saying like, okay, I can breathe through this through the connection of my breath. I can move through this by flowing into the next pose. This is temporary. And like all of those lessons are what we have to bring into our lives.
Right.
When somebody cuts you off, when somebody upsets you, it's like, okay, like this is temporary. I can breathe through this. I can be present in this. It may be hard right now, but I'm going to allow it to move through me and I'm going to also move through it.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the breath because it really does take you to your breath. And because you're still in those poses, it forces you to look inward, right? Like it forces you to connect to yourself. And I feel like back to what you were saying earlier in the episode about not being ready, no matter what we're trying to do in our life, whether it's parent or lead or be a friend, if we're not healing ourselves or working on ourselves, we can't do any of those things well. And we can't work on ourselves unless we look at ourselves. And looking at yourself is hard.
It is hard.
It is the work that brings you to a place of more peace and more freedom eventually.
Yeah.
And it's a lifelong process. It's not like you're like, oh, God, today I am healed and I can take on the world. I mean, it's a lifelong thing, but I mean, it allowed me to show up in every aspect of my life in a better way.
Yeah. So for me, it was a great place to start. And anybody who hasn't tried yoga or gotten into yoga, I mean, there's so many different platforms, whether you're finding an in-person class or doing it online or through Peloton, like, it's so much more than the physical asana practice. It really becomes a way of being. And that's another thing is like, it's a journey of, and when I started, it was like, oh, I'm doing yoga, or I'm doing my meditation, or I'm doing all the things. Well, that turns into like a task or a job or a responsibility, as opposed to just, I am being yoga. I am I am just going to be in a state of being. And so when you say also like, oh, you don't always do your meditation, right? You don't always sit on the ground and close your eyes and like do a deep meditation. Well, meditation can happen, like you said, when you're out walking, when you're doing the dishes. Like meditation is just about being extremely present in the moment. It's feeling the water washing over your hands and the slickness of the soap and the smell of what it is. Like, so you can change a daunting task of doing the dishes 500 times a day at home, right? And then to like, and then and introducing a mantra with it. Like, I am thankful for these, I'm thankful for the opportunity. I'm thankful for the food that was served on this plate. I'm thankful for the family that ate and dirtied these dishes. And it's not easy. It's not easy every time. It's not like I wake up every day being like, I'm so happy to do the dishes today. Like, so
Yeah.
but that gets into, like you were saying, I mean, I think it's so important we circle back to being in tune with yourself, and our power as women, as beings, really is our intuition of
Yeah.
being able to listen to ourselves and what we need day in and day out in those moments. And that is our power. And so when we're so full of noise, like noise is coming at us with the news and social media and work and home life and friends and family. Like there's always so much thrown at us that it can be hard to then shut that all out and tune in. And
Mm-hmm.
so, however, you're able to show up to be able to tune in to what you need for that day, for that moment, that's powerful. And then that like trickles into setting boundaries for yourself with other people. And being able to say, like, I'm sorry, I can't take that on right now. Or like, I can't listen to you complain anymore. Or I'm not going to be able to make the birthday party. I love you, but I can't be there because I have too much else going on. So whatever that looks like, but that's our power. And when you honor it for ourselves, when you set boundaries, when you live healthy for yourself, then that trickles out and people respect it. They want to also, take part of that on, like, wow, okay, she's really setting some boundaries. Then you're going to have people who look at you and say that you're being rude. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I totally set strong boundaries. Like, I can't take this task on right now. I'm really sorry. Da, da, da. And they're like, that's so rude. I can't believe you're telling me that you can't meet with me for 45 minutes to share X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it's not personal. I'm not trying to offend you by telling you I'm not able to help you right now. I'm letting you know I am at capacity and I'm just not able to do it. And I'm really sorry. It's just not personal.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel like you're talking about how you said our powers and our intuition.
Yeah.
1,000%. And our intuition's actually, you guys, your intuition's right. Your intuition, your gut feeling, it is correct. Sometimes, a lot of times, I don't want to listen to it because it's not the choice I want to be making. But it is correct. I say a lot, like if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. But you're like, but it's like an almost hell yes, or I want it to happen now, or whatever. But I think you have to really be able to know how to look inward in order to even know your intuition's there and to listen to it. And you're talking about the noise. There is all that outside noise. There's also so much inside noise, negative things you've heard about you throughout your life that you're choosing, or not even choosing, subconsciously still believing about yourself, or judgments that you have of yourself or others, or comparison or whatever. Like all of that is still noise in our heads, keeping us from trusting and loving who we are, and learning to quiet, for me, the internal noise. And that outside noise, it exasperates the internal noise. But that has been something that I've worked on and I'm continuing to work on, because if I'm constantly in a state of comparison, then I'm going to feel insecure. And if I'm insecure, I'm not confident. And if I'm not confident, I'm not, showing up
Showing
how
up.
I want to
Yeah.
or how I need to. So it's really, it's a daily practice. And I actually want you to come back, Breanne, because I feel like we haven't even tapped into the modalities and we're at an hour, but I want to discuss
Are we
all
really?
yeah, I know. I'm like looking at all this. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much we haven't talked about.
It is. Well, and so to kind of segue, like, so with you saying that, so fast forward through a lot of different phases and different modalities, right? That brought me into sound healing. And so with the sound healing, I feel like it took all of my modalities full circle and
Okay.
like encompass like what I want to offer. And so that then is a space and there's science behind it along with the woo-woo of how that creates a space for us to silence the noise inside of ourselves to be able to tune in. And so that's like now what I incorporate into whether it's a yoga, whether it's a meditation, whether it's a sound healing, whether it's an energy cleansing, sound kind of brings that full circle because it allows us to, it actually triggers brainwaves for us.
I was going to say it's how it's, making your brain fire, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's like
So
a
cool.
whole other topic, I guess.
It's a whole other topic, and there's so much. I mean, there's really so much more to talk about. There's so much more to. There's so much more to talk about. I kind of feel like I want to pause right here. We have a sense of who you are and your background, but I feel I do. We'll talk about this off camera, but we have to do this again and then go into what you're doing now, what the modalities are, how they're impacting people's lives, and that, how people can find it. Because for my healing journey, and that's what I can always relate back to, it was like I hit rock bottom and I was like, I can't live like this. I can't. So I started with books, and then I learned about meditation, and then I started journaling, and I started doing all these different things. But now as I've like maneuvered through, it's like I want to step into yoga. I want to, Reiki work, energy healing. Like it's just a beautiful journey, and there's so much out there, but I don't even think people know what's out there, or they hear sound healing and they're like, that's woo woo. Like, that's cool. But like, really, why? Like, why does it work? And like, what is it really doing? So we need to talk about it.
Well, so I'll just circle back to like my family and with that. And so when I told my father, right, trying to break these barriers and like showing up and having the respect for my family. Okay. So I told my dad that I was getting certified in sound healing and this is what I was offering. And he was actually down here visiting. And he says to me, oh, great. So now what? When people ask me what my daughter does, I tell them she plays bowls. I'm like, okay, thanks, Dad. Like, thanks for the support, right? This is okay. So I said, can I just invite you to sit down and I can play for you for a few minutes so you can experience it? And he said, okay. So he did. And I played, not very long, maybe 5-10 minutes max. And he sat up and was like, whoa.
Wow.
Feel it.
I love that he felt it even though he wasn't open to it too.
Yeah. And I said, you know what, Dad? I hope when people ask you what your daughter does, you can tell them she's helping raise the vibration of the planet. You don't need to tell them I play bowls. That's not what I do.
Yeah, that's one tool that you have to help in your bigger mission.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Breanne, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do. We'll definitely have to keep this conversation going. I'm really, really grateful that you came on today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so thankful that you had me.
Yeah, it was wonderful.